Hey guys, today I'm going to talk to you about how to determine the potential income of your Smoky Mountain investment property. Let's get started. Our first don't of the day, and that is don't limit your search to only properties that are current vacation rentals. There are many owners in this market who own properties only for their family, and they don't have them on a rental program, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that they won't make a good short-term rental with the right owner and the right management. So as long as the property meets the current short-term rental regulations, the HOA laws are okay with it, and the property is generally in line with what tourists expect to rent in the market, then it's going to make an all right vacation rental. And it is possible to analyze a property as a vacation rental that hasn't currently been or previously been a vacation rental. And we're going to talk about that towards the end of this video. Don't number 2, don't rely on current rental history. I know that sounds crazy, but when you think about it, rental history really is a variable. 5 different property managers can have the exact same property and do wildly different numbers with it. So rental history, while it seems like is a good indicator of future performance, is 100% a variable. And a note on rental history in this market: since this is a mature vacation rental market where vacation rentals have been around for decades and decades, there are a lot of very established local property managers that have also been around for decades and decades. The issue with those property managers, and I'm sure some of them are great, some are always going to be better than others. The issue with them is that the majority of them are very resistant to utilizing the technology that is putting them out of business. That technology are the online booking platforms, Airbnb, VRBO, and the other similar platforms that are out there. Because these rental companies are not properly utilizing this technology or utilizing it at all, their rental numbers are significantly lower than what they would be if the property were being marketed on these platforms effectively. Sometimes we will see local property managers use what I call dummy listings on Airbnb and VRBO, where they will post a listing on those platforms for their clients just to say, hey, look how we're marketing this. But what they do is they add on a very, very high fee at the end, whether it's a several $100 more than usual cleaning fee or a really big transaction or processing fee. Their goal is to get the guests to book on their website directly and not use Airbnb and VRBO. So even though they will post a listing in some cases, their goal is to drive the traffic back over to their website and not have the guests book on that platform. So if you do find a property manager or a listing for a property that you're looking at that has a listing on Airbnb and VRBO through their property manager, it's likely that you'll see very, very few bookings on those calendars, and this is why. Don't number 3, don't blame the property for things that are the manager's fault. As you're doing your research, you'll probably come across a listing for rental of a property that you're thinking about buying. And sometimes you're going to see some bad reviews on there. And you're going to know from your research that this property looks similar to the other properties that are doing well as rentals in the market. And just because there are a few bad reviews or a few complaints does not mean that there's a lot of stuff wrong with the property. It's 100% a reflection of poor management. Any material defects that the property could have will come up in your inspection period. So as long as you've taken a look through the property or your agent has taken some extensive videos for you and you can see that it is a nice property, try not to blame the property itself and let your opinion of the property be colored by the reviews of the management. Now on to the do section of this video. Do number 1. Do ensure that you are measuring all of the properties that you're analyzing using the same tool. For example, if you're looking at 5 different properties and they've been managed by 5 different managers, you can never really be comparing apples to apples. The only way to compare apples to apples is to make sure that all the properties are on the same manager, which is impossible. And even then, if they're not properly utilizing technology, like we talked about earlier in this video, their numbers aren't going to be accurate anyway. Or you need to get a projection from a manager that you trust, or use the data tools on AirDNA or Mashvisor or the like, and measure all of the properties using that same tool. You just want to make sure that you're measuring everything using the same tool and not measuring one property using this tool, one property using that tool, because you'll never really be able to get a clear picture of what the properties measure up against each other like. Do number 2, do use more than one data point. If you are analyzing a bunch of properties, and we already talked about making sure you're using the same tool to measure all of them, make sure you use 2 to 3 different tools to give yourself the most amount of data points to kind of triangulate what the true projection of a property is. For example, I recommend using the data from AirDNA, which is not perfect, but it is pretty decent. I found it to be pretty close to the properties that I own personally. My properties usually hit just under the 75th percentile mark, and they're not ultra luxury. So that is a really good tool that we have that's really accessible to us as just regular people. Another really good tool, or really good way to analyze, is the National Property Managers. So these are your Vacasas, your Evolves, your Turnkeys. Those guys are really big companies, and they have access to a lot of data that we as just regular people don't have. So when you're analyzing, if you want to take these properties to these property managers and ask for projections, they're happy to give them to you. So I recommend using a combination of the data that we have access to, which maybe you know some others that I don't. If you do, please drop them in the comments. I use a combination of AirDNA and Mashvisor, and then projections from Evolve, Vacasa, and Turnkey. And the last do of the day is what we here at the Short Term Shop call the enemy method. The enemy method is a little more grassroots and do-it-yourself way to analyze properties than just requesting data like we've talked about in the previous 2 do's, but it is a really effective way to kind of figure out what your property should be able to do. And what this tool or what this analysis involves is going on the websites, Airbnb and VRBO, and checking out what your potential neighbors are doing. Make sure when you employ the enemy method that you find a true enemy, and a true enemy is a property that is being managed the same way that you plan to manage. So if you plan to self-manage, then you need to look only at self-managed properties. Or if you plan to use a property manager, then you need to look only at properties managed by that manager, which can make it a little bit difficult. You also want to just check out the market as a whole, but in order to really choose your true enemy, it needs to be managed the same way that you plan to manage. Once you've identified a few enemies in your neighborhood, take a look at their listings. Do a deep dive into each one. Are their pictures good? Can you take better pictures than them? Are there misspellings in their listings? Are they doing a good job of explaining things? Are they doing a good job of explaining the process of the booking and the checkout and everything that would be on the front page of a listing? Check out their prices, check out their calendars. How booked are they? How not booked are they? You can usually tell if somebody has a lot of time blocked off and not just booked, because it will be booked solid for months and months. That's a good way to say, to notice and say, hey, I don't think this person is actually using this as an investment. Anyway, back to the topic. Just take a look at everything in their listings and see how you can be better than them. Can you be better than them? Can you improve the pricing? Can you improve the bookings and occupancy rate? Can you do a better job of the listing? Just take a deep dive into all of the listings in your neighborhood that qualify as your enemy and compare what you're able to do versus what they're doing. And that's going to do it for our list of do's and don'ts on how to analyze the income potential of your short-term rental. If you're thinking about purchasing a short-term rental in this market, we at the Short Term Shop are investors and agents, and we work exclusively with investors who are looking to purchase short-term rentals here. So hit us up, shoot us a text any time of the day or night, or at least leave us a comment and let us know if you found our video helpful.